Well, we have some nice weather today, and we've got straw stored in a barn over at the Cleverley farm, and they're gonna truck that back here. Today, Sarah's got a big hunk of ice in the back of her truck that she's gonna dump out back. And we have Alex's truck inside here. The boys ended up swapping out. Open the hood back up. Open the hood. The boys ended up swapping out a radiator in it. This plastic top of the radiator here was cracked. And for the better part of the fall last year, Alex could smell coolant all the time. And every once in a while we had to add coolant to it, and then it finally reared its head. What was it, on your last trip over to Genoa, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was leaking. She had a jug of antifreeze with her and had to add to it a few times. So this has a new radiator in it. They replaced the hoses. I don't know why Freightliner sent me this pipe, but they put that on there. New fan belt, and they also replaced the thermostat. The thermostat in this truck is quite large. It is this whole unit right here. And now it should remain cool. The radiator from Freightliner was $2,200. I ended up actually getting the radiator from Fleet Pride. It was like $1,300. $1,300 for the radiator, about $900 for hoses, thermostat, the belt, that metal tube. There was something else too, but it was like $900 of other parts. And then of course we have to replace the batteries in it. So we've got a fresh set of X-side batteries that we're putting in. I had to put new batteries in the Western Star. We had to put new batteries in the 7720. And what else did we put batteries in? We had to put 2 in the C5 the other day as well. So we've had our run with batteries here. So I've got some corrosion on this one cable that I'm gonna clean up. And we're gonna get that cleaned off of there and let Alex get out the door here. The other thing I'm going to work on today after I get these guys out of here is I'm going to work on getting the wet line or the valve, hydraulic valve on this 900. Well, she should be good to go now. Be good to exercise this truck some. That way we'll be able to top off the coolant levels. It does need an oil change, but we'll change it after she hauls straw today. And there goes Sarah. She dumped her ice out back. Well, we're just getting over here to the Cleverley farm. Looks like Jared's got Alex just about loaded. We'll see how this operation's going. I thought I would show you where the straw was coming from. This straw we baled over here on this farm last summer. We had wheat in this field here, one down the road, a bunch of it across the road. And to make things go a little easier, we ended up piling just about everything we baled over here. in this pole barn. So Alex is loaded and pulling out. She said she had to add a little coolant to her coolant reservoir because that radiator had been changed. Sarah's gonna come up here now and load. I don't remember how many bales we ended up putting in this barn, but last winter we cleaned everything out of here. We had straw in here last year, but it was just only 2/3 of it or so. It was a lot of stuff, junk in this end here, over in this corner. And we had a guy put some doors on this barn too, because they were gone. Looks like the ground is getting a little sticky here. So yeah, some new doors got put on here. That steel building had some siding put on it, and then there was a little building that was right there that we tore down, if you recall, back in the fall / winter of 2021. She just gotta make sure she don't go too far back, because that tailgate will hit the barn. How's everything going? Super trucker, right? You have to be careful dumping these. These floors are gonna be rusty. It's not gonna slide as easy. So you don't wanna rip the tailgate off or bend any cylinders. So, well, looks like these guys have got things well under control. I came more because I didn't know if there was going to be some frozen stuff in front of these doors or anything, but it looks like they opened up rather nicely. Well, I might as well go back to the shop. I'm not needed over here. This building's only 14 foot tall. Bales are only piled 4 high. And they'll make quick work of getting this out of here with the skid spinner. Jason's putting them away with the telehandler. He puts row 1 in and then piles 2 on top, and then he can keep pushing them forward. The telehandler won't lift high enough to put number 3 on top of number 2. That's why you see us with shorter backstops on the telehandler bucket, because we can put the 3rd one on top of the 2nd one with the telehandler. However, it does get into the tailgate a little bit. Everything okay? Oh, that reservoir's got a crack in it, or what? How hot did it get? How hot's it running? Not that hot. Might have just come out the overflow.
That's what I was thinking.
Keep an eye on it. They did fill it with coolant this morning. It's probably just too full.
Okay.
This one will probably need a new radiator too. Where's the engine temperature at? How hot did it get? No? Yeah. Huh? Okay. Trouble with these damn emissions engines, they have to run so hot in order for the emissions to work. There's not much room for air once they do get hot. Looks like we've got something right here. Fire starter. Well, keep an eye on it. Let me know. Alright. Well, we are actually going to finish this job up. If you recall, a couple weeks ago, we ended up tearing this hydraulic valve assembly that I had on the W9. I tore it off of there. Back in 2012, when I bought this truck, all I had for a trailer was the Aulick belt trailer, and then later on we ended up ordering the manure trailer. The Aulick belt trailer, that has a valve assembly on it with a handle control assembly to run the belt, and then another valve to run the tailgate up and down. So we felt at the time all we really had to do was just run a constant hydraulic flow to that trailer. So I felt that was best at the time to run the hydraulics to it off the Power Beyond that was on the control valve assembly. The manure trailer, I ended up getting a single acting valve for it. I don't know why, because our other trucks that I had set up prior, our straight trucks that I set up prior to this one, we were running double acting valves on them. And it just didn't occur to me at the time that we would like to maybe run the manure tanker in reverse. You get a stone lodged or something. Sometimes if you kick it in reverse, you can just kick that stone out of the way and go back into pumping manure. So I had that valve assembly tucked over into the frame rail, and it was nice and neatly out of the way. However, with it being in the frame rail, it just got, you know, it got a lot of garbage corroded to it and whatever, just being out of the way. It had a manual handle on it as well. We were shifting it with a pneumatic shift control valve with a pneumatic toggle switch. Actually a different design. It wasn't a toggle switch, it was a pneumatic push-pull switch up in the cab, which we only ran one way, and I had it blocked off so you couldn't run it in the other direction. So we have removed that, and as you've seen on the Western Star, we ended up mounting the valve directly on top of this channel iron, and we're going to do the same thing to this one. I ended up getting all of the grease and grime washed off the frame. This truck needs to have the steel air lines going to the airbags replaced. So we need to remove the tires, and I figured as long as we're going to do that, we're going to run around it with a wire wheel, get the frame cleaned up, paint the frame, and get those new lines on there. So I did run the pressure washer over it. So what we have is a pile of parts on the bench here. I actually have to build this valve assembly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a single acting valve for our hoist. This is a high boy. The reason why they call it a high boy is it's taller than the low boy. What do you know? And the reason why it's higher is it has a port relief. So what we can do, and I've explained this in the other videos, we can set this valve to run at a different pressure than the rest of this valve assembly here. So we have our inlet cover, which is right here. We need to O-ring that up. That's going to bolt through to our outlet cover, which is going to set on the back end. This outlet cover is just a tank return. It doesn't have the power beyond function to it, which I had talked before. They are a pain in the butt. To use those, if you're not going to go ahead and use power beyond, because you have to return that pressurized oil back to the tank. This inlet cover, I don't recall what pressure relief valve is in there. I don't know if it's a low pressure one or a high pressure one. I've got some high pressure ones right here, so we'll have to get this mounted and then remove it. I'm guessing it's probably a low pressure one because it looks like we have tried to adjust it and we've got the set screw turned all the way in. We've got a couple of handle kits here that we need to put on as well. And then of course we've got our stud kit, and we need to install one pneumatic shift cylinder here to this single acting valve. So we'll get this stuff all set to go. We'll bring it over, bolt it to this channel iron here. We don't have much to do on this truck. We've already got a filter head assembly. The return filter is already installed on this truck. We've got the PTO on there. The pump is already on there. We just need to install our valve, the pogo stick, the trailer harness plug will go on to here, and basically a couple hours worth of work and we'll have this set and ready to go. We've got a console up in the cab that's already up in there. We're going to run a gauge up in there like we did to the Western Star. However, that console is basically the same console, but when Jared set it up, he didn't set it up to have an additional toggle switch mounted into it, nor did he leave enough room for the gauge. So we're going to have to pull the lid off of the console in here. I'll show you what that looks like. And what we're going to have to do is weld a plate on there and start over. So he's got his PTO in the back side there, and then this is the push pull. It looks like an old cable assembly. This is a pneumatic valve though, and then we've got some shims in underneath it. This is on in that one direction down to neutral, and then them shims are in there so that you can't run this valve going in the other direction. I suppose we could use this pneumatic control valve to do that function, but I think you're going to be all the time trying to find neutral, so I think we'll just go without that option there. So we might as well go ahead and get started here. Alright, so what we need to do here is we need to get our valve assembly bolted together here. Being that we only have 2 work sections, we can kind of build it sitting on its back side here. So we've just got to make sure that our O-rings are in here, and then we're just going to wipe a little oil onto them. This one here, I need to put some new O-rings onto. All we're doing is just putting the O-rings on here, and then we'll splash a little oil on there. Just to give them a little something to start with here. And we'll put our inlet cover on. So we've got our outlet cover sitting on the bench. The only problem with doing it this way is you're putting the valves together upside down. So you've got to hope that your O-rings don't end up falling off. Got that there, and then we've got our inlet cover. We're going to do the same thing to that. We'll get that one O-ringed as well. Now we can throw our studs in. And we'll roll it over, and I'll have to pull off the spring cup here and install the other air control. And then we can, of course, set this into place and bolt it down. I'm actually going to throw some primer and some paint on the bottom of this valve before I set it into place. Okay, that's as simple as that. Just remove our spring cup here, get our air control on there. We've got a couple of handles to put on as well. And then what I'll do is I'll spray some primer on this, throw some paint on it, and then while the paint and the primer is drying, we can be tearing that console apart. Well, we might as well show you what the back end of this valve looks like here. So what there is a spring inside this plastic cup that will return the valve to neutral. So if you run the valve in one direction and let off your handle or your cable control or what have you, it will automatically return the valve to neutral. So what we need to do is we need to remove this spring, because what this will have is it'll have the air control will have the spring in it. So we need to hold the other end of the spool itself. And then I usually just throw this stuff away. I'll never take the air control off. I'll never need to save the, I will want to keep the pneumatic one anyways. And there's this plate here, you throw that out. And then you get your handy dandy air control out. Now what this air control has is it has the stud right here, which is, I don't know where that bolt went, which is this same thread, and then this will thread onto the end of the spool. So it's not recommended, but what I do sometimes when I think of it, I'll put a little bit of Loctite on on the threads where this air control goes into this valve here. And then what you do is you just reach in the back side of the air control. There's an Allen head fitting in there, and what that does is that matches, I gotta get the orientation right here. You want to be that way. We'll just thread this guy into the spool. Probably should have put my studs in, but we won't get it quite tight. That's threading into place. We're almost there, so we might as well shove our bolts through here. I need to get a 1/2 inch socket for these bolts so I can tighten them up. Alright, so we got our 1/2 inch socket. Reach back in, tighten up our Allen screw. I didn't realize I had that tight already. So that's that. Now we're going to throw some primer on here and then put some paint onto it as well. Well, we ended up getting some paint on the bottom of our valve assembly here, and after I get done doing what I'm doing on the bench, we'll get this bolted down and we can get the fittings in it. But what I'm working on now is I took the cover off of the console that was in the cab. Now this had PTO switch, one control for the pump, and then Jared had a couple of toggle switches in there. So what we had to do is we had to cut a piece of steel and we put it over the top of the cover. And the reason why we had to do that was because he had the switch centered, and he had a couple of toggle switches in there, electric toggle switches, and it just didn't really leave enough room for the rest of it. So we ended up taking this old style, well, this is a Chelsea PTO switch here, and as you can see, it takes up quite a bit of room. This here is a Muncie style air control to turn the PTO on and off. We've got it marked out. We're going to put the PTO switch right here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put our two toggle switches in there, and we'll run the system pressure gauge right off the backside, just kind of like we set up the console and the Western Star. What we're going to be doing is we're going to cut this opening for the PTO. We're going to cut that with this plasma cutter here that I picked up on eBay here a couple of weeks ago. This is a Hypertherm Power Max 600. This one didn't have a lead on it. However, I had a new lead off of the Hypertherm 800 that I had. I had a little interruption there. So the Hypertherm 800 that I had, something happened to that, and I just so happened to find this one on eBay. I was just this close to buying a brand new one, which they're going for, well, the one that I wanted was upwards of $6,000. I paid $750 for this one. Like I was saying, this, I had a lead off my other one. That's a newer style lead, which that lead is $500-600, but it wouldn't work on a new one. And I figured I would go ahead and give this one a try. I do have that one from Harbor Freight, but I didn't know how long that was going to last, and I wanted to pick up this one just so that I had a better one to use. So we're going to be using that on this job here. So far so good as far as how well this one works. The 800 that I had, I bought used back, oh, it must have been 1997 or 6. And like I said, it was used. This one is a 2008 model. The guy I bought it from on eBay, I sent him a message, hey, this thing works pretty good. Do you know what year it is? And he thought it was like around 2008. It is newer than the 800 that I had. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Well, that cuts pretty good. This piece that is on here is 12 gauge, and then I ended up cutting through both the 12 gauge and the 14 gauge that the lid is made out of. So we're going to have to do some final fit up there. We need to fit this switch, or this air control, down in there so that we can fasten it right to the lid. So we'll do some final fit up, and then we'll join back up with you once I get more of this laid out. Well, we are fired up and ready to go. We've got our valve all hooked up. We've got the pressure line coming into it on the front side here. And then we have the return line coming out the back, going back to the tank. Now on this truck has a dual tank. So we got fuel in the back and hydraulic oil in the front. So we'll go ahead and reach down in here. We'll turn our oil on. We haven't had that on yet. We do have a mess on the floor. I changed the hydraulic filter, which this hydraulic filter is right down in. It's right there. The oil's going to return off the back of that valve, go up front, go right back into the top of this tank. Now usually what they have is this tank has a diffuser, so when the oil comes in, it's being sprayed out into the tank. If it was to come in just full force, what it would do is it would find its way right back to suction, and you don't want that. The tanks that we put on the trucks, they have they've got like a baffle in the middle of them, so it sucks off of one half and it returns to the other half so that it doesn't just keep returning and recycling the same oil. It gives the oil a little bit of a chance to cool down. So I ended up changing out the main system relief. That was the low pressure one, and I didn't want to chance it as it being the wrong one, so we went ahead and changed that out now. So we've got our meter on here that reads the gallons per minute, and it also reads the pressure. And then we have a 1/4 inch line coming off of the inlet cover, and that's going up into the cab. And then we've got a console that's in between the seats here. We've got our PTO switch over on the right hand side, and then we've got the spreader, or the motor spool valve is on this toggle, and then that outside toggle is the toggle for the hoist. Sounds like I've got air leak in there too that we're going to have to address here in a little bit. So we've got our gauge in here. I put a nice 45 on there so you can see it a little better, and I'm going to do the same thing to the Western Star. So with a little bit of assistance from Jared, we'll get him to run the truck, and then we can run the valve and see what this hydraulic system is putting out for flow at the specific pressure that we want to run at. This pump is a little bigger than the pump that was in the Western Star, so it's going to put out a little more flow than what the Western Star has. If you want to go ahead and fire up. I've got an air leak in there. I've got to pull that console apart, I think.
Which one is it? Which switch?
Just turn the PTO on. I'll run the valve from out here. Alright, so he's got the PTO engaged. Okay, go ahead. Hitting almost 3,000, and it's about the same as Western Star. Running right at 42 to 44. We did get our oil leak fixed, by the way. I ended up replacing that wing coupler. It's like 45. Give you an idea as to what that'll do for pressure and flow. It's running right in where the Western Star was running, so that's pretty good. We were right at almost 3,000 psi, 2,900, and then we were running at, we were closer to 45 gallons a minute. What?
No.
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully there ain't something against that. Hopefully there ain't something against that exhaust. So we've got to look into that. All right, so what we're going to do now, I have to get these airlines unhooked. I'm going to get them unhooked, and then what I'm going to do is remove the wheels. I have to replace some airlines, go into these airbags, and we're going to run down through it. Get the frame cleaned up and throw some paint on it.